Agreement. And Ron Insana, CNBC senior analyst and commentator, welcome to you both. So, Yamiche, walk us through some of the details of this deal, and how does each side portray the way they're feeling about the final income?
Well, it's interesting.
Outcome,
both
rather.
sides. Right. Well, both sides right now are portraying this as a win for each country or country bloc. The EU and their president, the European Commission president, in announcing it, said that this was a good rebalancing of the trade relationship between the EU and the United States. She also said that this really allows the world's two biggest economies to continue trading, which is really what she said was part of her priorities. And then, of course, you have President Trump walking through all of the different investments now that the European Union is going to be making into the United States, including buying large amounts of military equipment, investing in energy, as well as there's going to be a 15% tariff that's going to go on a number of goods, European goods, including cars, which is really important because the president at one point was saying that there weren't enough American cars being built and enough American cars, rather, being sold in Europe. That being said, listen to a little bit of what the president said.
I think it's great that we made a deal today instead of playing games and maybe not making a deal at all. I think it's, I'm going to let you say, but I think it's the biggest deal ever made. Thank you very much.
We have a trade deal between the two largest economies in the world. And it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. It will bring stability. It will bring predictability. That's very important for our businesses on both sides of the Atlantic.
So positive words from both of these leaders. And let's remind folks that August 1st, this coming Friday, is the deadline that President Trump says all countries need to really reach in order to have trade agreements with the United States, or they'll face ultimatums and they'll basically be told which tariffs they're going to pay, Alex.
Okay, Ron, we have learned today this deal sets a 15% tariff on most European goods to the U.S. Yes, it's much lower than the 30% rate the EU was facing. But is this the deal the EU was hoping for?
No, the EU is hoping for zero for zero tariffs, that we would have none coming this way and none going that way. And Alex, it's I think important to remind people that when folks are saying that the tariffs are lower than threatened, they are still considerably higher than the tariffs that have been in effect for quite some time. The average tariff that the U.S. charged on other countries was 2.4%. This tariff is now 6 times what it was before in actuality, not in just what was threatened or what the president has talked about over the last several months. And so tariffs are going up, and that means the price of automobiles, which are going to be tariffed at, I believe, 15 to 25%, steel and aluminum, still 50%. Coming from the European Union. So the average tariff, when all is said and done, is going to be considerably higher than it was. Yes, the U.S. government will get revenues from this. Either companies will see their profit margin shrink, or consumers will pay more for the products coming into the United States. You can't have this done this way without one of those two outcomes actually taking place.
And when do those price hikes get implemented, Ron?
Well, I guess as soon as the deal is signed. I mean, it's interesting. All of these have been framework agreements. I mean, Alex, as you know, and as Yamiche knows, I mean, trade agreements usually take several years to put together when you look at the technical language, the legal language that goes over each and every item that's coming into a country or going out of a country. You have goods and services trade between the United States and the European Union. So I imagine it'll take some time for this to go into effect. But some of the tariffs have already gone into effect, and we've seen that in the revenue that's gone into the Treasury coffers. The president's also talked about rebating some of this to U.S. consumers. We'll see if that happens, because at the same time, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is talking about the revenue increases that will reduce the size of the deficit. So again, you can't do both at the same time. You can rebate, or you can reduce the deficit, or you can do a little of both, but you can't do both in size.
Yamiche, given what a huge fan this president is and those that surround him on implementing tariffs, is there any dissension from within the White House on this, thinking, you know what, Americans are going to have to pay a lot more for things they typically buy?
The sort of dynamics are on when it comes to White House officials, when it comes to just this deal, because there, of course, has been this just was announced. That being said, you do get this sense that they're a bit worried about sort of prices going up, because we know, of course, that it is the president's own supporters who understood that the president wanted to put tariffs. This was something that he made. It was a campaign promise. This was not sort of a secret that he was going to go after different countries and try to increase tariffs. But there is this real sense of sort of foreboding and bracing to see how bad price increases could get, because, of course, if you have people starting to complain about, I can't buy a car anymore, or I can't buy the kind of cheese I want, or just all sorts of things that we get from Europe, including, of course, aluminum and steel, that could then become sort of a political issue for the president. But I think for right now, White House officials and the president himself are sort of bracing to see what happens and what the consequences of some of these tariffs are. And by the way, the president has been warning the American people, saying there might be some pain in the front end, and that he wants people to bear with him. So he's in some ways already telegraphing to Americans that prices may go up.
As we look ahead, Ron, with tomorrow, we have the president meeting with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The White House says these two men will refine the US-UK trade deal that was agreed upon in May. How so? What do you expect from this meeting?
I don't know how much more they're going to refine it. I think the UK has a 10% tariff versus the 15% that the European Union and Japan both were leveled with over the last several months. I mean, there may be some small details. I mean, the UK outside of the European Union is not as big an issue as the EU, as Canada, Mexico, and China. So I think that's really something that's at the margin. I think the bigger question, Alex, this week is, does the Federal Reserve have much to say about these tariff increases now that we know what they're going to be? It's wildly unlikely that the Fed will lower rates in this week, as the president